Kintsugi Heroes brings you the following flood resilience stories in partnership with Singleton Neighbourhood Centre and grant funding from the Hunter New England and Central Coast Primary Health Network. To find out more about this podcast, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au. On July 6th, 2022, the worst flood in 70 years hit the town of Broke and the surrounding Hunter Valley region. The community is still recovering from the trauma the floods brought, destroying their homes and their livelihoods. In this special limited series of Kintsugi Heroes, John Millam sits down with the community who suffered as a result of the floods and gives them space to share their adversity, resilience, and compassion. It's only through connection and empathy that there can be a path to recovery. These are stories of trauma and can be confronting. If you find they have a triggering effect, please reach out to someone who can help keep you safe. Now listen in as John takes you beyond the deluge with Kintsugi Heroes.
So, welcome listeners to another Stories from the Flood, Beyond the Deluge with Kintsugi Heroes. My name's John Millam and I'm here today with Bernadette Tolson. Bernadette, you were involved with the flood right up to your chest in the water, but you're not exactly in the village, right? So you have property just outside, and of course you're on the other side of the infamous road collapse, right? The gap in the road that locked off the village so much. But of course you were you had your own challenges with the flood, and you were able to observe what was going on around you. So Bernadette, welcome to Kintsugi Heroes, Stories from the Flood.
Thank you, John.
And just let's maybe start a little bit today just by having the maybe you tell us a little bit about you, how you ended up at Broke and your background leading up to the day of the water.
I was actually a child growing up in Broke, and I left when I was 18 to go to this big city of Sydney, and then I moved to Victoria, and I returned to the Hunter Valley in 2012. Little did I know that we would buy a property at the end of the street where I grew up. I think that happens quite often. So we purchased the property in 2012, and we have an acreage there where we run cattle, we have a vineyard, and we have accommodation. And of course, yes, we're on our property was the place where the Broke Road collapsed, segregating one side of the town to the other.
Right. So, and you were on the open side, right? But of course, that didn't mean anything when water was across the road in other places anyway. So
initially the water was across the road, separating Broke and Singleton, but gradually the water dried up on the Singleton side, so we could actually go to Singleton, but we could not get into the village itself.
Wow. And so you bought a property 2012, so you've been there. It's funny how the circle works, right? You came back to your hometown. That's beautiful. I love that idea. So obviously Broke is in you, right? Calling you over the years and your exploration of the world. As a child growing up in Broke and then coming back to it and setting up, a substantial business and life in Broke, in that area, what does it mean to you?
It's certainly as home now. It certainly wasn't for a long time. It means for me, it's wonderful to see the changes and the development of Broke. When I left Broke, there was a few children at the school, and the mines hadn't come into the district at that stage, and the vineyards were only just starting to begin. So it was a very small town, only 6 or 7 houses in the village itself. And for me, I just think it's a vibrant, reasonably young community now with all the development that's happening around. And it's a tourist destination. It's a great employer of people working in the mines and associated businesses with the mines.
Mm. Yeah, great. That's great. You and your family live, and run, accommodation and vineyards and cattle. And of course, you work with children in the area through the PHN. What's it like every day, when the place isn't covered in water?
It's a beautiful property. Broke itself is a beautiful place. For us, Broke Estate, our property name is our farm that we love. and we've spent a lot of time and energy restoring it. It was a very run-down property. My husband works on the farm. Well, he actually works away, but he's the main person. I'm the assistant manager when he's away, and we have two wonderful children who live in Adelaide who are very, very involved in the property itself. So, yeah, it's our special place.
So your special place, you're sitting there on the 5th of July, and you must have known that there was a lot of water. Obviously, it'd been raining, and the floods were getting, the water levels were rising. How did that go for you?
Well, it was interesting, John, because on the Sunday, Max and I were down in the vineyard, and we looked across to the Telstra towers over near Margans, and we couldn't see them because of the rain. And we thought, oh, there's another big rainstorm coming. And then I went to work on the Monday morning, and I got to the intersection of Broke and Cessnock Road and looked down towards Wollongong, and the water was over the road, which I had seen before and wasn't too perturbed about it. Went to work, and I had a long meeting, a Teams meeting, and at 1 o'clock the meeting finished, and I thought, I should check the bomb and see what's happening with the weather. And, of course, all the hazard alerts came up to say that the roads were closed and there was flooding happening. So I left work about 20 past 1 after I had to do a few things, and I went to go home, and I couldn't get past Hermitage Road. But on the way, I observed the flooding in Nolkabar, the Christian school, St. Philip, was entirely flooded around. It was like an island. Luckily, there was school holidays. So I had to go home via Singleton, which I didn't get home in the end till after 3 o'clock. So it was a very long, wet journey. And when I got home, drove in, we had water coming up onto the property. So, it was a bit surreal. It was so unexpected. There weren't warnings. So Max and I went down to the fire station, and we met a wonderful person, Robbie, down there, who said, if you've got cattle, you should go home and get them up because the water's coming fast and it's going to be a big flood. So we went home, and when we got back home, the water was over the road. Actually, before I went to the fire station, I thought there must have been a broken water main on the main road because cars were going past and splashing everywhere. But it wasn't a water main, it was the river already coming.
Wow.
Sorry, that got home. Yeah, so it was already, by the time we got back home, the water was over the road.
Wow.
It's fast.
Yeah, so that thought, what's going on? You've got livestock, you've got, vines, you've got, your personal safety. What was going on?
Well, the main thing we thought about was our cattle. We had a cow and calf that we needed to rescue, and we had 12 young heifers who were down in the water, and we had to rescue those. So Max set about going off on his 4-wheel motorbike, which consequently got flooded and damaged, and we had to replace it. And it was a miracle. The cow and the calf followed him out the stockyards, and then he came back home and got some wire cutters to go back and cut the fence to get the heifers out. So we were happy that we had rescued those, and it wasn't about the value of the cattle. It was about life, livestock. We would hate to have seen those cows float away, which has happened.
Many people we've spoken to over time talk about the tragedy of losing their livestock like a member of the family.
Well, we'd been there for the birth of every one of those calves, and they were precious to us.
So your property, what ended up happening as the water progressed?
So we managed to get the 12 heifers up to near the house, and then they were safe. By this stage it was getting dark, and then the water just progressed up to the house, right up to the house itself, and then it stopped, thankfully. I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning it stopped.
Wow.
But in the meantime, we had lots of phone calls from friends in interstate telling us that the floods were bad. We didn't know how bad they were because we didn't have any communication. The power had gone out. It was dark. We couldn't watch the news. We were very mindful of not using our telephones.
Yeah.
You use the battery, but luckily we remembered we had some battery packs in the shed, and we were able to charge our telephones. So yes, it was a wait and see game, and just wondering what was happening everywhere else.
Yeah, because you're slightly separated, so you would have felt like very isolated. What was that like?
It was scary because we were very isolated. We were actually on an island because there was water all around us, and the road to Singleton was closed. The neighbours were all locked off from us as well, blocked out. We thought if we did get stuck there, we could just go up into the ceiling onto the roof. We didn't think the flood would get that high, so I guess we had to just stay calm. And I think we'd learned a lot of resilience from the bushfires. We needed to have a safety plan. My daughter in Adelaide was amazing. She was on the phone constantly telling us what we should do. Max had previously had some surgery, so he was actually still recuperating, and he shouldn't have been wandering around in dirty water. But she was amazing in just making us think about our future and evacuation future and what we should do. We've got 2 beautiful dogs. How we're going to manage the dogs? They were going to go with us, no doubt. So I think we had to just relax, really, amongst the stress.
So clearly, it's quite anxiety filled, right? That situation. So, so you had to calm down, right? What did you do to calm down? That's like not an easy prospect.
No, well, we had cold cups of tea.
Oh gosh, like of all the damage and trauma, that's probably the worst, right?
Yes. How did we manage that? I think it was, the phone calls from friends. My sister was a great person throughout the night. She kept calling, checking in on us. And I think it was around having that connection with someone who didn't understand the floods, but understood us as human beings, how we managed stress, and talked us through. Yeah, and I guess for me, talk us through the disaster. For me, I had great delight in going out every hour and marking the water as it was coming up to the house. My mother used to do that long before, many years ago, and that was for me, something to keep a task for me to keep my mind at ease. Yeah, I sent Max to bed about 1:00 because I thought he needed some rest. I went and cleared the shed out because I had a lot of memorabilia in the shed that I was worried might flood, so I was out there busy doing that, lifting it up onto tables.
Wow. And the good news is that the water went as far as threatening your island, but didn't go in, right?
Yes, yeah.
When did you feel like that was that was going to be the case? That you could sort of relax a bit about the levels of water that you were tracking every hour or so?
It was about daylight when you could start to see that the water on the bricks was not going any higher, that it was stable. Yes, yeah.
So now as you think about that, right, how do you assess your level of response and preparation for a situation like this?
I think we've done better at doing that since the flood. I think most people in any flooded area, and particularly in Broke, would probably have better evacuation plans, even though this was, an incredibly fast flood. Be more prepared. We thought we were prepared, but things like we still haven't got it, but acquiring a generator.
Yeah.
So we do have power. We certainly had plenty of food, which I think when I first came to the country to live, my friends said you must always have lots of food in your freezer, which we do. We lived on frozen vegetables and frozen fish for a week. But I think be prepared emotionally and have evacuation plans. I think now, since the disaster, we've got, for most people in Broke, they now know who the significant people would be to call in an emergency, whereas I think before it was a little bit vague. And I think that's a positive thing that's come out of the floods. We're more connected.
Well, nothing substitute lived experience for sort of getting it better. So interesting. You had the island, right, and sort of once that personal, you had a sort of sense of, I'm not, this is not good, but I'm not in any more threat. from that island you looked out, what did you see? Like you couldn't. When did you connect with others, and how were they going?
Uh, it was some days. Oh, I guess on the Wednesday, we had several phone calls from the SES and the fire brigade talking about evacuation. So, but we did request and we were approved to stay because we had water, we had food, and we were concerned about our livestock. That once the water went down, the fences had been washed away and the cattle could escape. So I think it was about the Wednesday because we personally didn't bother anyone in the community because we were safe and the only thing we wanted was water. We didn't have any fresh drinking water, but that was delivered to us, as soon as possible. I did collect rainwater. I had all my basins outside in the sun, collecting, not the sun, in the yard, water. But I think the connection really came for us to the village once the road opened and we were able to go down and be part of the village and part of that recovery check-in point at the community centre.
What did you see?
Oh, amazing. Just incredible. The first shock was people's personal belongings on the streets, but then the place was just buzzing. People were, lots of mixed emotions, but there was food, there were people, there was the police, there were the politicians, there was, you name it, they were there to help out. It was an incredible, and we just felt very welcomed driving into town on our four-wheel motorbike without any helmets and with a high-vis jacket on. It was weird driving down the road on a motorbike, on a quad bike.
Yeah, and the environment, was it changed?
Yes, it was like a war zone. Sadly, I hate to think I saw a war zone, but it was very sad to see the devastation. It was dirty, it was wet. Yeah, the sun was shining and it was really eerie.
Yeah. And then, as you say, mixed emotions. How did, and you're sitting there, how did that navigate? What did you see in your fellow, citizens as well as, you navigate?
Well, for me, I didn't actually know a lot of residents because the village had changed a lot and there was only a couple of people that I really knew. So I hadn't seen any change in people because I didn't know them, but I got to know some amazing people in that community and then realised what a very well-connected village it was.
Yeah.
And the people there were working very, very closely together. There were some, like I said, mixed emotions, and there was there were chaplains from the army walking around the street wanting to, support people who needed it. So yeah, there was a lot of support there and a lot of fellowship.
That's really important, that immediacy of support and that recognition. The fear, supplanted by connection. How did you like it? It sounds good. Do you think Broke did it well? Is that was that because it was Broke, or was it the people involved, or what?
Well, I think it was Broke, but I also think with there were some amazing services came in who were after a few days that supported the village and the people, and they had, from, like I said, the learned experience coming from Lismore. There was Salvation Army, the Red Cross, Land Services were there, Centrelink, Resilience New South Wales, and all these services were set up in either the church. Well, they originally were in the hall, community centre, but that then became a virtual shopping centre.
Yeah.
And work area for jobs to be done. And so the meetings ended up, or the services ended up sitting in the local Catholic church. And I can remember going there one day and just going there because everyone else was there, and just stood at the door, and we didn't really need anything, but the Salvation Army lady said, "Oh, come and sit down." And she just had a chat and gave us a voucher for Bunnings, which was amazing. It was just, we didn't expect that, but yeah, there were a lot of people in need and they knew what to do. They were incredible people.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like the best of a terrible situation.
Hmm.
Did you see that disturbed you?
I think it probably was the break in the road because it meant for so many people, not just for us in the village, but for people who used that road every day, and there's literally thousands use that over a week, that they weren't able to commute to work. It was a
Mm.
long journey around to go to work for the people in Broke itself. Luckily, it was school holidays, so the children didn't need to go to school, but for them to go to work in Singleton or go into Singleton where their GP or their bank was or any services, they had to go around the long way, which was stressful for people. It was financially stressful in their cars, time away from their home where they wanted to be. Hmm.
Yeah, so the idea of being isolated as a village is
Mm.
challenging. Who did who suffered that and that you were able to help or, saw being helped in a way? I guess, you mentioned belongings and stuff that you were seeing,
Mm.
so that physical impact on the people in the village. Well, what was it like?
I guess for me, I was able to stop and chat to people only as a resident if they wanted to chat. Physically, it was frustrating that we couldn't get in there earlier and help. And I think by the time we were able to get to the village, things had been so well
Mm.
organised. But I think it was just the presence of turning up for the wonderful community meals that were on at night time, just
Yeah,
having friendship with those people and just acknowledging that, yes, we were safe, we didn't have the house damage, and that we were able to come and support people sitting around a meal was well, food's always a wonderful healer.
yeah, very much. So you of course, your property is a working property. So what was left for you to do after all of the water had gone?
That's a long story. How many hours do you have? So
Yeah.
we're still working on the recovery, but we had amazing help from. We very regularly in the winter time, the autumn winter months, have beyond ballooning,
Wow.
land their balloons on our property. And again, that's looking at not just the people in Broke, but the services. The tourism industry beyond Broke was damaged because they couldn't come and
Yeah.
bring their balloon flights. So Beyond Ballooning actually purchased some sort of grader or digger to help
Wow.
make a driveway for us. They came, 4 or 5 guys came initially to come and do some fencing, repair some fences, and then came with their digger to make a driveway for us. And then we had at the time we had the army. They were just amazing young guys. I really enjoyed working on the property with them. They were 5 young guys, all about 20, just finished their first part of their military training. And it was wonderful. We had a wonderful day. They talked about their girlfriends and about the army and about where they went to school, and the sun was shining and they were in mud up to here. They
Oh,
they
wow.
did a great job. They were fantastic. Down the track we had Blaze Aid come and help with the
Yeah.
fencing.
Wow.
They were incredible. And then we had lots of friends who came to help with, because we needed our grapes were on their side.
Right.
Luckily,
Wow.
the grapes were dormant, but we had lots of friends and relatives who came and helped with restoring the fences and the grapes, getting the grapes to stand up again. Because
Of course, all the vines have been knocked over, hadn't they?
and it's soon once the property dried out, the vines started to shoot because it was going into springtime.
Right. Wow. And the flood vintage, what's that going to be like?
That was a bit of a disaster.
Right.
And that was an unknown for all of the vineyards around. And I think generally the production was low, but the next year it picked up again. Yeah. So they were very resilient vines. They bounced back.
And the wine, what's it taste like?
It's great. Yes. You'll have to have taste.
Sounds terrific. So, the vines are resilient. I've certainly recognised that the people are resilient. So, How do you see that, the preparation and help you had putting your property back together? How did that work in the area, larger area?
I think for most people, it's been a slow process. For some, they were able to move back into their homes, quite quickly. Others still waiting for their homes to be rebuilt. I guess, there's different levels of people being able to move back and recover. And I guess that's probably difficult for some who are still not back in their homes. Yeah, but I think for the properties around, again, it took a long time for fences to be restored and livestock to be returned.
Yeah.
Grass to grow again for the livestock. Yeah.
Yeah. So much involved. How do you think the area is healing physically and, personally, emotionally?
I think the village is coped very well as time has gone on. I think they're quite a resilient group of people in the village. Tourism's back. We're looking forward to our bicentenary at the end of the year in October. That's bringing a lot of community together, and we've just been nominated as one of the finalists in the top tourism town award, and I think people are taking a lot of pride in their homes and in their front yards, and it seems to be a buzz. There's a lot of significant people in the village. Maybe it's the guy on the digger that's done a lot of work, and he's a very social person. And it's just it's networking. The fire brigade people are amazing. The broke residents group. Yeah, so I think it is. I think it's bounced back.
Sometimes when we talk about bouncing back, like back to normal, do you think it's the same, or has it changed? Is it bouncing forward to something new?
I think it's bouncing forward. I think there appears to be a lot more connectedness in the village. And I think that goes back to the early days when we had amazing after the initial emergency centre was demolished or disbanded. Then there was a big community dinner for everyone, which I think it was an amazing show of people who all turned up, and I think that was probably the beginning of the change of moving forward. Since then, there's been ongoing funding for things like wellness sessions, yoga, mindfulness sessions, morning teas, and I think there's a lot more connectedness in those group settings that there was before, and more people are aware of them.
Wow, it's amazing. What did you learn through all of this?
The learning thing is that there were no major injuries. There were no fatalities. It is a natural disaster and floods happen. Unfortunately for us, it was the biggest one possibly ever. Yeah, we're fortunate. We're a lucky community, lucky country where we do have services and supports in place, and it's important for everyone to use those, not feel isolated. And for people who were feeling isolated and not wanting to go to the community centre, for someone to take them aside and encourage them to go and visit and be part. So I think, and understanding different people's emotional needs and mental health needs that may have been pre-existent and then raised their nasty heads when disasters happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to do differently going forward as a result of going through?
Differently, hopefully it never happens again.
Yeah.
Differently, I think the community are already doing things so that there would be. I am part of a couple of committees in Broke working on different things, but certainly the residents committee, as a general, being looking at having contact people in certain areas, and I think that would be helpful. So instead of me, and like I said, I didn't make phone calls because I was aware that a lot of people were worse off than me, but there would be one contact in a designated area, maybe about 5 throughout the area, where that person would be taking phone calls and screening and helping people and keeping them up to date with what was happening. And I think I would like to take on one of those roles. But I think differently, probably not a lot. Yeah, just have to stay calm.
What about as a person? Are you different in some way?
I think I'm probably not as anxious now about floods because certainly when the next heavy rains came, I was very anxious. As a person, overall, I think just more empathetic around other people and how they respond to disasters.
That's beautiful. Moving forward, right, with, it's coming up to 2 years and anniversary. What do you hope your place looks like, both your property and then the area? What do you hope it goes to? What it becomes?
I think it'll continue to grow and be a beautiful village, but still with a very rural aspect. So we've got this little tight-knit community, but around it we've got some amazing properties, which are, as you drive in, it's a beautiful setting. So my property, we still have a lot of devastation. I haven't mentioned that the riverbank, we had a massive, massive wash away, and we'd hope that someday will be restored. We're not quite sure how that's going to happen without hundreds of thousands of dollars spent. And our property will continue to be our little treasure. And we were very fortunate that we do have a glamping site on our riverbank, and that had survived. It had been put back on hold in March because of the floods, and then we were ready to have our first opening, our first guests, a couple of weeks after the floods. It had been a long project, which my son had been working on, and amazingly, it was the only thing standing on the property. It survived. If you see aerial photos, it's this one little white tent. So we're hoping to have some more glamping sites, but not on the river, up on higher ground, and continue with our accommodation opportunities. Yeah, and for me personally, have some time off work and potter around the property.
Enjoy all that beauty and resilience around you.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous. All of that help, and you've expressed how wonderful that support and so on is. Is there anyone in particular that stood out and that you're grateful was in the area or so on, or any group or people that you particularly noticed?
I'd really like to acknowledge the support that the politicians, Dave Lizell and Dan Rapicoli, provided to the community. They were there for every meeting, after the event. But prior to their appearance, people like Evelyn, who I wasn't able to help, of course, but set up the emergency centre. Mick McArdle, he stepped up to the role. There was a guy that I met at the hall at the community centre, and he came from nowhere apparently and said he'd like to help. Well, he ended up managing all the whiteboards, and when I couldn't believe going down there, and I think there were 5 whiteboards, and everyone had a number with a name next to it, and these guys and the mining company came on board, and they were just designating job numbers to people. That was incredible. I couldn't believe that could happen, and none of them ever had that experience before. There was a lady, Angela, who lived across the river, and she had to be evacuated. Her place was flooded. She set up a Give It Foundation fundraising group, and that money then was allocated to people through a committee of who needed that money. She was amazing as far as doing the social media. And other people the fire brigade, Kathleen and her team at the fire brigade, they worked endlessly day and night, all the fire brigade people. Yes, all those volunteers.
It's a wonderful story from, I don't know, how do you describe such a challenging event? But I'm so pleased to hear the stories of initially facing the challenge, but the best bit is to hear about how the community collectively responded and supported each other. It's so inspiring. And your story in particular, I would like to acknowledge your part in the ongoing healing and recovery, and of course your family getting through what is a terrible time. So well done, Bernadette, and I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining and sharing your story with Kintsugi Heroes.
Thanks for the opportunity, John.
It's been terrific. Cheers. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beyond the Deluge about the 2022 floods in Broke and the Hunter Valley. If anything in this conversation has had a triggering effect, please seek support and find someone who can help keep you safe. Please share the show to your friends, family, and colleagues so we can help more people with their recovery from natural disaster. If you'd like to find out more about Kintsugi Heroes and our other podcasts, please head to kintsugiheroes.com.au. Our theme song was provided by Colin Lilly. Thanks to Matthew Bliss for editing and production, and to John Millam for hosting the conversations. And most of all, thank you to the community of Broke and the Hunter Valley for sharing their lived experience with us. We'll see you next week in Beyond the Deluge.
Only when it's broken. Only when it's broken. When it hits you in the middle of the night and the truth burns so bright. Only when it's broken. Only when it's broken. Take pride in those cries. It's only for tonight, and then you rise. Only when you're broken. Only when you're broken. Only when you're broken.